Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 230 based on novel. So let's start. An ancient dragon origin soul was very amazing in the eyes of these people. When the ancestor looked at Wang Lin's origin soul, his eyes revealed a complex gaze. He let out a sigh as he walked forward and clasped his hands. Upper Celestial, this lowly one would like to inquire. Wang Lin didn't look at the old man. He arrived next to the War Chariot. After staring at the 6th rune for a moment, Wang Lin devoured it without any hesitation. Then he directly devoured the 7th rune as well. This scene caused everyone's eyes to narrow and they all looked more closely. At this moment, Shuligua's eyes turned. He immediately flew into the air, pointed at the chosen immortal clan members, and shouted, "My master is refining a treasure. Unless you step over my dead body, you can't even take half a step into this area." These words were filled with force, especially given Shuligua's expression of him rather dying than letting anyone disturb his master. He gave off a powerful aura that spread like a storm. The ancestor quickly retreated a few steps and respectfully said, "We will not go within 1,000 feet. We just have a few questions." Before the old man could finish speaking, Shuligua shouted, "Shut up. Unless you step over my body, you can't bother my master even a bit. My entire life was given to me by master. It was master who saved me from the abyss. It was he who taught me spells and allowed me to gain my inheritance. It was my master who gave me my current power. If you want to disturb my master, I, Shuligua, will never allow you." Shuligua's words were filled with excitement and his eyes revealed an expression that showed that he would stand up to anyone, no matter how strong, if they were going to harm his master. He was even willing to die without wrinkling his eyebrows. He was a hero. The ancestor's body trembled. These words had another meaning when they entered his ears. In truth, their entire clan were servants to the Celestials. This person knows the meaning of loyalty, and my clan also understands this. The old man looked at Shuligua with respect and thought, "I didn't expect this spirit to be so loyal. Upper Celestial is lucky to have someone so loyal." Tarshan stood next to the old man as he stared at Shuligua. He felt very complicated about this matter. It isn't that my clan isn't loyal, but the people we were loyal to have forsaken us, unlike this spirit, who has someone worth being loyal to. Shuligua's show was very lively, but it was completely ignored by Wang Lin. Thunder filled Wang Lin's origin soul and bombarded the last 2 runes. They were going through the final phase of refining. As the rumble of thunder echoed inside his origin soul, one of the runes began to crumble. This didn't happen instantly but was a continuous process. During this process, the god-slaying War Chariot under Wang Lin's origin soul flashed a black light that was gradually becoming more intense. In the end, it was as if it could devour light. Under the flash of black light, when people looked at Wang Lin, their minds would tremble. This scene aroused great shock in the members of the chosen immortal clan. They were unable to calm themselves down. Shuligua was still acting righteously. While the others weren't looking, he snuck a peek at Wang Lin and thought, "What is so great about that? Your grandpa Shu can do it as well. It's just devouring runes, I even devour people." Shuligua was filled with disdain, but his eyes only showed respect. His face was filled with admiration and his body was even trembling. Looking at it from the surface, he looked like a loyal servant that had become excited due to his master's spell. When Tarshan saw Shuligua's expression, he let out a sigh and his heart felt even more complicated. As for the ancestor, he secretly nodded and felt that Shuligua's loyalty was very respectable. In truth, these chosen immortal clan members had been living here without contact with anyone from outside for too long. Although they weren't stupid, they couldn't be compared to Shuligua. Shuligua was very slick and good at adapting to change. His near 1,000 years of experience allowed him to refine his skill even more. If someone could easily see through him, then he wouldn't be Shuligua. Time slowly passed. After several hours, Wang Lin's origin soul suddenly moved and the sound of thunder inside his origin soul suddenly intensified. When the rumbling reached its peak, it suddenly stopped. Wang Lin's origin soul's eyes shined brightly and the final 2 runes were absorbed. Now there was a very important decision placed before him. Should I refine it into my life-linked treasure? While Wang Lin silently pondered for a moment, the 7 runes fused together to form a unique rune near his chest. The moment the rune appeared, the black light gathered from the War Chariot and imprinted on Wang Lin's chest. God-slaying War Chariot, seal release. This divine sense message spread out like thunder and all the black light seemed to go into Wang Lin's body. Then the countless thorns began to flash and an illusory shadow quickly formed. This was a soul beast that was almost 1,000 feet tall. The moment it appeared, it let out a roar and all the chosen immortal clan members' expressions turned pale. The plants between their eyebrows flickered rapidly and they all couldn't help but retreat. Only those few with powerful cultivation were able to hold still for a bit before they had to involuntarily retreat as well. All of the mosquito's hair stood up and it let out bursts of roars. Likewise, the thunder toad's belly swelled up as it prepared its most powerful spell. Only Shuligwa still struggled to shout, "Unless you step over my dead body." However, before he could finish, the large beast turned its head and looked at Shuligwa. Shuligwa was so terrified that he swallowed the second half of that sentence. "Your grandpa Shu has the inheritance of the ancient sword spirit. Once I finish absorbing it, let's see who will be afraid." Although Shuligwa inwardly cursed, he quickly retreated. He was very fast, so he was far away in the blink of an eye. Wang Lin's expression was neutral as he stared at the beast before him. His origin soul flew back into his body and then his body flew into the air. As the soul beast let out a roar, it withdrew its gaze and looked at Wang Lin before rushing over. It was too fast. The moment it moved, it was already before Wang Lin, and it tried to devour Wang Lin. Wang Lin's eyes were calm and he didn't retreat. Instead, when the beast closed in, he softly said, "Collapse." There was a bang and the soul beast collapsed into countless fragments that filled the area, but it immediately reformed. Its eyes were filled with hatred and it let out another roar before charging toward Wang Lin again. Wang Lin's voice was calm and he said once more, "Collapse." This time, as soon as the soul beast charged out and let out a roar, its body collapsed. After fusing with the 7 runes, if you refine it as a life-linked treasure, then you can naturally control it. However, if you choose to not to refine it as life-linked treasure, then the 7 runes can be used to collapse the soul beast 7 times. This will give you 7 chances to make the soul beast yield. If the soul beast still hasn't yielded after 7 times, then you must refine it as a life-linked treasure, or else it will be impossible to use this treasure. These words from the celestial jade appeared in Wang Lin's mind. After the soul beast collapsed 2 times, its eyes became even more fierce. It let out a violent roar and then its body reformed and rushed out once more. This time its body split into countless parts and attacked Wang Lin from all sides. Wang Lin frowned slightly. He was a very cruel and decisive person. After 1,000 years of cultivation, he had developed his own ways of doing things. It was obvious that the soul beast still hadn't yielded yet because he hadn't hurt it enough. Wang Lin's eyes became cold and he calmly said, "Collapse. Collapse. Collapse." After these 3 words were said, the soul beast rushing over immediately collapsed and was pushed back. Then, immediately after, the second collapse occurred. A miserable groan came from inside the collapse, and at this moment, another collapse occurred. The 3 continuous collapses had sent the soul beast into unimaginable pain. If the collapse wasn't continuous, it could still withstand it, but these 3 continuous collapses caused fear to appear in its heart. The moment that fear appeared, its body began to reform and there was some hesitation. At this moment, Wang Lin's eyes turned cold and he calmly said, "Collapse." With a bang, the soul beast that had just reformed collapsed once more. The fear that had just appeared increased like crazy. In the end, it almost occupied the soul beast completely. Its body reformed once more and its eyes revealed respect. It no longer dared to resist and it lowered its head in surrender. Wang Lin's body flickered and stepped into the air. A moment later, he arrived on top of the head of the soul beast. He bit his finger and pressed the special imprint used to activate the War Chariot on the head of the soul beast. The soul beast's body trembled and started to shrink. Wang Lin jumped off and looked at the soul beast as it quickly shrunk. A moment later, it turned into a ball of fog that was only the size of a fist. It then quickly turned solid like a cocoon. A wave of cracking sounds appeared and cracks appeared on the cocoon until it finally collapsed. A 5-colored butterfly gently moved its wings and set off some 5-colored dust as it flew out from the cocoon. This butterfly was very beautiful, and it made Wang Lin's eyes narrow. Just at this moment, the transfer array at the bottom of the mysterious yin furnace flashed and a person walked out. This person's body flickered before they charged toward the gate. He appeared near the gate and charged out. This was a man wearing a blue robe and his eyes were cold. What is a lowly servant of this realm doing? This blue-robed man was middle-aged. His eyes were cold but had a demonic glow. His lips were thin and he gave off a harsh aura. His scattered hair made him look like a devil among celestials. He walked out from the gate of the altar and flew into the air. His figure hadn't solidified yet. If one looked at him, they would still see the altar behind him. Wang Lin was floating in the air, and behind him was the butterfly that appeared after the Godslayer War Chariot was activated. The butterfly gently flapped its wings to keep itself afloat. The eyes of chosen immortal clan members were filled with caution as they stared at the middle-aged man and retreated. Tarshan's eyes were cold as he took a step forward and shouted, "Who is this?" The blue-robed middle-aged man's gaze moved from Tarshan and swept through the members of the chosen immortal clan. His gaze finally fell on Wang Lin and became serious. "You're not from here. Where did you come from?" Wang Lin's expression was cold. He was able to see through this middle-aged man's cultivation at a glance. The middle-aged man was at the peak of the corporeal yang stage, a bit higher than himself. At this moment, Tarshan frowned and rushed forward with his right first. The tattoos on his body flashed and condensed on his right fist as he punched toward the middle-aged man. Tarshan shouted, "Who is this?" "Bo." The blue-robed man's eyes revealed contempt. It was as if he was looking at an ant when he looked at Tarshan. He raised his right hand and pointed with one finger. A ripple appeared with this finger as the center and began to spread. Just as Tarshan closed in, his expression immediately turned pale. He could clearly feel a power inside his body that prevented him from getting closer and attacking. This power was extremely powerful, as if it was an instinct that was deeply imprinted into his body. When he was 200 feet from the middle-aged man, Tarshan couldn't move any closer. His face revealed pain as his whole body trembled and large drops of sweat dripped down. He clearly felt that the power that prevented him from moving forward came from his own tattoos. The power from the tattoos made it so he couldn't resist. It was as if he had met his natural enemy. No matter how strong he became, he still wouldn't dare to attack the middle-aged man. He had a very strong feeling while his mind trembled. It was as if the other party only needed one thought to cause him to collapse immediately. Tarshan had never felt this feeling in his life. However, the moment this feeling appeared, it was as if it had always been there. It was something that was branded into the life of all chosen immortal clan members. He couldn't resist. Tarshan's body trembled. When the middle-aged man's gaze landed on him, he even had the impulse to kneel down and worship the middle-aged man. However, due to his own dignity, Tarshan clenched his teeth and stopped this feeling coming from his soul and the tattoos on his body. A growl of struggle that was almost like a roar came from his throat, and his eyes were bloodshot. What came out of his body was no longer sweat, it was blood. While struggling, Tarshan lifted his feet and took another step. His body trembled once more as if he was facing the world. This step had only risen, and before it could land, Tarshan's vision went black and he coughed out a large mouthful of blood. His body could no longer withstand the force. It was as if there was a big, invisible hand pressing down on him and making him kneel. 2 streams of blood came out from his eyes. His eyes contained a mix of sadness and unyieldingness, but his body could no longer stand. He could only kneel. The middle-aged man sneered, "You lowly clan dares to resist the slave imprint. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to kill you, you would have died with just a thought from this celestial. Now scram." It was as if Tarshan's body was hit by an invisible fist. Sounds of explosions came from his body when he was thrown away. He crashed into the ground more than 1,000 feet away. Tarshan struggled to get up. His eyes were filled with an unyielding and murderous gaze as he shouted, "Who are you?" At this moment, not only Tarshan, but all the chosen Celestial clan members sucked in breaths of cold air as they stared at the middle-aged man. What just happened was too strange, and they couldn't accept it. The ancestor's face was pale as he looked at the middle-aged man. He seemed to remember something and his body began to tremble. The blue-robed man's gaze was cold with a trace of pride as he calmly said, "Celestial. Why aren't you kneeling yet?" The ancestor of the chosen immortal clan let out a wry smile, and at this moment, he didn't doubt the middle-aged man's words. He remembered how the ancestors described their excitement and respect when meeting a celestial in the records. There was no need to guess this person's identity. As soon as you meet them, you will know. These were words left beyond by the ancestors of the chosen immortal clan. The old man still hadn't understood. He mistook that excitement and respect with loyalty. However, when he saw the celestial, he suddenly understood. "I can't help but be excited. I can't help but be respectful." The old man let out a miserable smile and knelt on the ground as he whispered, "This lowly one greets up a celestial." He wasn't the only one to kneel. The hearts of the other chosen immortal clan members trembled as the middle-aged man stared at them. There was a force inside their bodies that made them yield. Even if they died, even if their souls shattered, they still had to yield. One by one, the chosen immortal clan members knelt down and lowered their heads. A moment later, there were only two people that hadn't knelt down, Wang Lin and Tarshan. Tarshan didn't kneel as he had already knelt once. This time, no matter how much blood came out from his body or how much the invisible force pressured him, he struggled to force himself to not kneel. Sounds of explosions were coming from inside Tarshan and blood was spraying everywhere. He had already been injured in his battle with Wang Lin, so right now his body couldn't bear it anymore. His eyes were dim, but they still revealed an unyielding gaze. Wang Lin frowned when he saw what was happening. He was able to gain a lot of information from this. Whether it is the chosen immortal clan or the forsaken immortal clan, it is obvious both are slaves to the Celestials. The slave imprint makes all future generations slaves to the Celestials. This is a slave imprint that was placed on a clan's inheritance, just like Li Yuan's family. If it wasn't for the matter with Li Yuan, Wang Lin wouldn't have been able to see the whole picture. At this moment, he clearly understood everything. The slave imprint is fused with the tattoos of the chosen immortal clan members. This slave imprint is extremely overbearing and is far more powerful than the one used on Li Yuan's family. After all, the one used on Li Yuan's family only made his family serve one celestial. However, this slave imprint is different. It is very likely that it makes them kneel to all celestials. This is no longer manipulation, but complete enslavement. It makes the entire clan something that belongs to the celestials. Moreover, since there are chosen immortal clan members on planet Suzaku, then it is obvious there are a lot more of these clan members. Wang Lin's eyes became serious as a bold idea entered his mind. It is likely that countless years ago, before the celestial realm collapsed, there was a clan. This clan was very strong, even strong enough to confront the celestial realm. However, in the end, they were defeated by the Celestials. It is even likely that all four celestial realms came together to cast a very powerful spell that turned all future generations of this clan into slaves for the Celestials. Wang Lin could only sigh as he looked at the chosen immortal clan members trembling and kneeling on the ground. The blue-robed man's gaze landed on Tarshan. He then frowned as he raised his right hand and pointed at Tarshan. A bang came from inside Tarshan, and then a large amount of blood flooded out from his pores and he was covered in blood. "Kneel and bow." The blue-robed man's voice was cold. Tarshan's eyes were bleak, but they had an unyielding gaze. However, the power of the slave imprint was not something he could resist. It was as if countless mountains had smashed down on him, as his knees shattered and he knelt on the ground. At this moment, the surroundings were completely silent. Shuligua flew far away the moment he realized that something was wrong. He was pondering whether he would resist or surrender if the fiend was defeated. The mosquito beast was circling the air with its gaze locked onto the middle-aged man. The thunder toad was looking over from a distance with a cold gaze, and its belly was bulged. The blue-robed man was staring at Wang Lin, but he didn't do anything rash. He had naturally seen through Wang Lin's cultivation, and the butterfly next to Wang Lin gave him a very strong sense of danger. This person isn't someone of this lowly clan. How did he come in? From the look of his aura, he isn't a celestial. Who is he? The blue-robed man's eyes lit up, and he didn't provoke Wang Lin. Instead, his left hand pressed down on the altar under him, and the gate of the altar opened. At the moment the gate opened, strands of black fog charged out and turned into hideous fog beasts. The woman from inside the furnace also came out, but she didn't step out of the gate. She only stared coldly at Wang Lin. The moment the fog beast appeared, the expressions of the chosen immortal clan members changed. However, the force from the slave imprint made it so they couldn't get up. It was almost an instinct that they couldn't resist. The fog beasts took shape and quickly opened their eyes. Their cold gazes shined brightly as the blue-robed man pointed at the ground. These fog beasts quickly rushed toward the ground. This scene caused Wang Lin's pupils to shrink. One of the fog beasts turned into a 5-clawed bird as it rushed toward a chosen immortal clan member. It pulled the clan member into the air and let out a cry that penetrated the clan member's body. That clan member's body exploded into a mist of blood that was absorbed by the fog beast. Even until the moment of death, that clan member didn't resist at all. There was a trace of struggle in his eyes, but it was too weak. On the other side, the other fog beasts closed in on the chosen immortal clan members and swallowed them one by one. The area was immediately surrounded by the smell of blood. Along with this aura was a deep sense of sadness and helplessness. Every clan member that died couldn't resist. The sadness in their eyes was extremely strong. At the moment of their deaths, they gained enlightenment in their hearts. Perhaps this is my clan's mission. Tarshans knelt on the ground with his knees shattered. He struggled to raise his head and looked at the deaths of his clan members. A sound like the roar of a beast came from his throat. The veins on his face were bulging as he tried to resist the slave imprint that had become an instinct for his clan. As the blue-robed man coldly watched all of this, his expression was calm. The ancestor of the chosen immortal clan's body trembled. There was a gust of wind as the youth behind him was thrown into the air by a fog beast and was devoured. The old man subconsciously raised his head as a drop of warm blood fell on his face and slid down his cheek. The old man's eyes revealed a power sense of indignation. He muttered, "Why? Why?" Just at this moment, a fog beast rushed over and dragged the old man into the air. A force came from the deepest part of his heart and filled his body. The old man's eyes were filled with sadness as he looked at the blue-robed man and shouted, "Why?" When the old man shouted, the clan members that hadn't been killed yet struggled to raise their heads. Their gazes followed the old man's and landed on the blue-robed man. These gazes were filled with endless sadness and anger. Your mission is to feed the fog beasts, and there is no reason. I won't let all of you die, because I need you to reproduce future generations. The blue-robed man's voice was extremely calm. Just at this moment, one of the fog beasts rushed into the distance. Its target was the children hiding inside the buildings. The blue-robed man frowned slightly, but he didn't stop them. The old man let out a miserable smile as the fog beast rushed at him, and he was about to collapse. Just at this moment, Wang Lin let out a sigh and pointed at the void. The fog beast that was about to devour the old man suddenly collapsed. The old man stared at the fog beast that was closing in on the buildings. He could even hear the children calling out in panic. They were calling for their loved ones. The chosen immortal clan members struggled to get up. Roars that were like growls came out from their mouths like crazy. Although Tarshan's knees were shattered, his eyes were red as he struggled to get up. Even if his bones shattered again, he still needed to stand. Celestial? Celestial? What do you think my clan is? My clan guarded the mysterious Yin furnace for countless years, but what did we get? It was these fog beasts and the countless deaths of my clan members. Now I finally know that these fog beasts were what my clan was guarding. That my clan's mission was to become food for these fog beasts. Since that is the case, I will resist. Even if my body shatters, I will not give in. Tarshan's roar finally broken through his throat and came out. Not only him, all of the chosen immortal clan members let out roars. The plants between their eyebrows flashed intensely as they struggled to stand up. The blue-robed man's expression was still cold as he said with a hint of contempt, "Back then, your clan lost and became slaves. This is your life. You can't change it." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and pressed down, causing a series of explosions. Blood sprayed out of the body of the chosen immortal clan members and they were stopped from getting up. Only Tarshan charged out with a roar. The moment he charged out, explosions came from inside his body as his bones were shattering, but he still charged out. The blue-robed man's eyes lit up and he pointed with his finger. Wang Lin let out a sigh. He originally didn't want to meddle. This blue-robed man's origin was very mysterious, and he was actually a celestial. However, as he let out a sigh, he opened his mouth and the fragment flew out. The moment it appeared, it flew between Tarshan and the blue-robed man. The blue-robed man's eyes lit up and his gaze turned cold. His right hand formed a seal and a rune filled with celestial spiritual energy shot out toward Wang Lin. "I thought you wouldn't act." The middle-aged man leaned forward as he rushed after the rune and rushed toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's right hand pointed at the fragment, causing it to rotate and smash toward the blue-robed man. At the same time, Wang Lin arrived beside Tarshan. His left hand touched Tarshan and sent out some origin energy into Tarshan's body. Tarshan's body was immediately thrown out toward the fog beast that was charging at the buildings. After doing this, Wang Lin turned around and his two fingers formed a sword and immediately chopped down. The incoming rune immediately collapsed and turned into ripples that quickly dissipated. At this moment, the fragment landed and the blue-robed man's eyes became cold. His hand formed a seal and the celestial spiritual energy inside his body surged, then a spear appeared in his hand. This spear was completely white and gave off rich celestial spiritual energy. He let out a laugh as he smashed the spear into the incoming fragment. There was a loud bang and the blue-robed man was knocked backwards. His eyes became serious. However, the fragment was also pushed back several dozen feet. As the middle-aged man retreated, he shouted, "Lowly slaves, attack with me." When his voice entered the struggling chosen immortal clan members' ears, the order became their instinct and they couldn't resist. Their eyes were filled with sadness and struggle, but their bodies all rushed toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he retreated. The butterfly formed by the god-slaying War Chariot was still following Wang Lin. Now that Wang Lin was retreating, it followed Wang Lin like a shadow. Wang Lin had a thought. He wasn't clear about the power of the third god-slaying War Chariot. His eyes lit up as his right hand formed a seal and pressed it down on the butterfly's body. Killing intent appeared in Wang Lin's eyes and he pointed at the blue-robed man. The butterfly didn't move at all and its wings gently fluttered, but this time they were a little faster. 5-colored powder fell from its wings and slowly filled the area. The blue-robed man immediately stopped, and his eyes were filled with caution. He had long noticed the butterfly, and it was the butterfly that gave him a feeling of dread. Otherwise, he would have already attacked instead of waiting until now. The chosen immortal clan members all flew into the air without their control and flew toward Wang Lin. The struggle in their eyes became even stronger, but they couldn't resist the power of the slave imprint. Wang Lin's eyes shined brightly as he stared at the butterfly. He wanted to know just what power this third god-slaying War Chariot had. The butterfly left Wang Lin's side and flew forward. Its wings suddenly paused for a moment but then gently flapped again. This flap caused no disturbance, but the face of the vigilant blue-robed man in the distance suddenly turned pale. There was no wind around him, but his hair flew backwards as if there was a gentle breeze. A bang came from his body, causing him to jerk backwards and cough out a mouthful of blood. The blood mist condensed into a butterfly and the moment it appeared, it flapped its wings. Another bang came from the blue-robed man's chest and blood sprayed out. The blood turned into another butterfly and flapped its wings. As the bangs echoed, the blue-robed man was constantly knocked back. Each this happened, a large amount of blood would spray out and turn into a butterfly. Every flap of the butterfly's wings caused him unimaginable damage. His eyes were filled with horror, and there was even a trace of fear in them. He couldn't resist at all. It was as if everything inside his body didn't belong to him and was sealed by a mysterious power. The butterfly reappeared once more, and the blue-robed man was thrown back once more. This continued until he was more than 10,000 feet away. The fear in his eyes had reached a limit. As he struggled, the blue-robed man hissed, "Thunder, explode!" A rumbling sound came from his body and his right hand collapsed, releasing a destructive force. Borrowing this explosion, he was able to temporarily restore control to his body, but his face was completely pale. He was frightened, and this fear almost occupied his entire body. What spell is this? What kind of treasure is this? He had never seen such a strange treasure in his life. Just a flap of the butterfly's wings almost made him collapse. At this moment, he charged toward the altar to escape. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He had a mysterious connection with the god-slaying War Chariot, and he had a feeling that this chariot hadn't used its most powerful attack yet. Just at this moment, the five-colored butterfly next to Wang Lin gently flapped its left wing. The middle-aged man that was quickly escaping had just entered the door of the altar. At this moment, his body trembled and his eyes were filled with disbelief. His body began to dissipate starting from his feet, and in just a moment, his entire body had disappeared. The blue-robed man died. Somewhere in the nether beast, there was an endless, black void, and a person was sitting in the black void and giving off black fog. What was strange was that there was celestial spiritual energy inside that black fog. At this moment, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked straight ahead. His eyes were filled with shock. To be able to destroy my avatar so easily. What kind of treasure is that? This video will end here.